What's up everybody, I hope you're doing well today. Before we get started with this video, I just wanted to remind you to make sure you're hitting that like button if you're enjoying our videos and hitting that subscribe button. Both of those things are huge in helping us get our videos noticed, and if you want to support us, that's a great way to do it. And if you're not enjoying them, leave us some feedback. We obviously can't get better and bring you guys videos that you want to see if you're not giving us feedback. So with that being said, let's get into today's video. So what I'm going to talk with you guys about today is my thoughts, feelings, and basically an overall review of my experiences the last 2 years with my Tethrd Mantis saddle. Now this is the first saddle I ever owned, and I must say it's definitely been an experience. It's been a learning experience. There's a lot of stuff that you need to get used to, some changes. I've pretty much only ever been like a set tree stand hunter. I've never really messed around in the hang and hunt game until I got this. So it's nice to have this that I can pretty much use as my one tree stand, or saddle obviously, and pretty much go anywhere with it. But there are some things I like, some things I don't like, so we're going to break them down here today. Starting off here, I'm going to get right into the things that I haven't really liked about the whole saddle hunting game, and some of these might be specific to the Tethrd Mantis, but a lot of them might just be saddle hunting in general and the way it's advertised. The first con that I have about saddle hunting is it's not as comfortable as a tree stand, and this could be a lot of the way that I have mine set up, and I didn't get my backstrap or anything like that until this year, and the Tethrd Mantis does ride up on me a little bit, so that also plays a role in it. I have some modifications that I'm going to do to see if that helps that, but right now, after 2 years, my thoughts are it is more comfortable for an all-day sit in a tree stand. Another thing that I've noticed when shooting out of my saddle is it's not as sturdy to shoot out of as a tree stand is either. Now, there's some different techniques. You see a whole bunch of guys doing a whole bunch of different methods of shooting out of these, but from what I've experienced, I'm just not as sturdy. Whereas in a tree stand, I feel like my effective range is further out than it is with a saddle, just because I'm kind of hanging from a tree. I feel like I just cannot get as stable from my saddle. Another thing that I've found, especially here in Nebraska, is that I cannot hang comfortably in every tree like it's kind of advertised. The issue with a lot of the smaller trees in Nebraska is we obviously get a lot of wind, so you get a lot of trees that are growing at an angle, and you're not finding a lot of the like split trees in the area that I'm hunting, so sometimes it's difficult to find a tree that is straight enough to be comfortable and not too leaned over to where you're feeling like you're falling out of the tree and you just cannot be steady in the tree. And once I get in those trees, I do feel like I am hanging a long ways from the tree. If you look at me from the side profile, I feel like when I have deer walk to my left or to my right, that I'm just a really long ways out from that tree if I'm leaning at that time. Now if you're kneeling or sitting or whatever you want to call it, you're not as far out from the tree, but when you're leaning, you do have quite a bit of side profile in that tree. One of the big things that saddle hunting is sold on is the fact that you have the ability to shoot 360 degrees around you or around a tree. I have found that this is true, but some of the positions aren't necessarily the best as far as movement goes. It seems like if you're going to shoot weak side, you're going to have a lot of movement. If you're going to shoot behind you, you're going to have a lot of movement. And yes, you can choose not to make these shots. You can choose just to let the deer walk behind you. You can choose to let them walk by weak side. And if you compare that to a tree stand, you don't have the option of shooting behind you. You can still shoot weak side in a tree stand, but I do feel like the real selling point of the 360 degrees thing is great, but it's also not as easy as a lot of people make it sound. Those of you that are familiar with saddle hunting will understand this, but generally when you're setting your saddle up, you want to set it up to where you're behind the tree from the main trail that you're hunting, so you can use that tree to hide. But in some trees where you're going to have a whole bunch of trails, this kind of becomes an issue, and this kind of leads me into the next problem that I have found with saddle hunting, and that's that it's difficult to see what's behind you. You have this issue in tree stands, of course, but the advantage of a tree stand is you have a tree between you and whatever's behind you. In saddle hunting, you don't have anything. You're hanging from the tree, and if you want to know what's going on behind you, you have to physically turn your body to see, and that leads to movement that is not covered by a tree. So I do think it's easier to see what's behind you from a tree stand than what's behind you from a saddle. Now my last con does lead into my first pro, and it's the fact that you are hiding behind a tree. Now it's a disadvantage when the deer are behind you, but when the deer are in front of you, it becomes a very, very large advantage. There's times when you'll have deer at 5 or 10 yards and they'll be right in front of you, and if you're in a saddle, you're going to be able to stand right behind that tree. And if you're in a tree stand, they're going to be able to see any movement you make out in front of that tree. No matter how silhouetted you think you are, they're going to be able to pick off any movement. But if you're hiding behind the tree, you do have a little bit of wiggle room with your movements. Now that doesn't mean you can be moving all the time, but you are going to have a little bit more wiggle room, and I feel like there's less of a chance that those deer are going to bust you. And I did experience this year on one of my first rut hunts of the season, where I had some bucks moving off in the distance, and I had two fawns and a doe standing right in front of my tree at 5, probably 7 yards, and they sat there and messed around for probably 15-20 minutes, and they kind of had the feeling that there was something wrong in the area, but they never actually picked me off. And that's because I was standing behind the tree, and I strongly believe that if I was sitting in front of that tree in a tree stand, they would have picked me off, they would have blown, and basically the rest of my hunt would have just been messed up. One of the things that I do like about it, and obviously anyone who's heard of saddle hunting has heard this argument before, but it is very packable. You can't deny it. I mean, the Predator platform is so much smaller than a tree stand, and if you're carrying a tree stand, you have to carry sticks also, and it just becomes much more bulky when you're trying to run and gun, hang and hunt with a tree stand and steps versus a saddle platform and steps. And you can even make it slimmer if you want to hunt off the top step of your sticks. So I have to give it to the saddle hunting. It is much, much more packable than a tree stand. One of the things that I did mention in my cons, but I think can also be a pro, is the fact that you have that ability to shoot 360 degrees around you. Now, like I said, as a con, some of the positions that you have to get in cause a lot of movement, but I also don't see it as a bad thing to have the option of shooting 360 degrees around you. This next pro does kind of come from the cons too. The fact that you can hang in a wide array of trees. Now, like I said in the cons, there are a lot of trees that I can't get comfortable in where we hunt. But there are a lot of trees that I could get comfortable in if I'm just going to hunt 3 or 4 hours. It takes a different type of tree to be comfortable all day than it does to be comfortable for 3 to 4 hours and something you can just deal with and hunt out of. So I do consider that a pro also, the fact that I can get into almost any tree. One of the things that I have found since I started using a saddle and we started filming all of our hunts is I have really enjoyed filming out of the saddle. It's nice not to worry about having your tree arm set up over here and kind of working it around your body and trying to get it off to your left side when you're trying to shoot across your body. It's nice to be able to run it on the tree in front of you and then slide it between the tree and you over to your left side, or just run it with your left hand, and you feel so much more versatile when you're running a camera in a tree stand with a saddle. One of the things that pretty much anyone who's heard of a saddle has heard of is the fact that it is more lightweight, and I agree with this. It's easier to get lighter weight with a saddle than it is to get lighter weight with a tree stand. To get really lightweight with a tree stand, you're going to be spending a lot of money on a specific lightweight tree stand, whereas with a saddle, it just comes with the territory. It's the setup. The saddle itself is lightweight. You start with a small platform. You have your same three sticks or whatever you're running for climbing, and you've got your tree tethers. Whereas a tree stand, you're going to have your tree stand, you're going to have your steps, which is kind of the same. I mean, you have a saddle platform, but you'll have a whole tree stand, all your steps, your harness, and that stuff just gets bulky. Harnesses are not light, and big aluminum frame tree stands are generally not that light either. Alright everybody, so that's the end of my pros and cons of saddle hunting versus tree stand stuff. And I can tell you, I am not switching from saddle hunting. I have enjoyed it. I have loved every second of hanging in that saddle. So I am not switching over. I just wanted to give you guys these thoughts and something to consider about if you're getting into saddle hunting, or if you're thinking about switching to saddle hunting, or if you're even thinking about leaving saddle hunting. So there's some stuff that you get in with a tree stand, and there's some saddle, and you don't get everything either way. So just take into consideration what you want, what works best for you, what works best for your system, and enjoy your hunt. So with that being said, make sure you guys are liking, make sure you guys are subscribing, and don't forget to check out our shop. It'll be linked below in the description, and we've got some hats on there and some other gear, so make sure you're checking that out, and check out our Instagram at The Seasons Media. Other than that, I'll catch you guys on the next one.